Good morning and welcome to NC Tech's Focus on Talent webinar. I'm Andrea Fleming, Director of Talent and Workforce Development for NC Tech. I'm happy to have all of you join us today. So a little bit about NC Tech before we get started with Creative Talent Endeavors. We are a not-for-profit, membership-driven trade association. We serve as the primary voice of technology industry across North Carolina. So our mission is to foster growth and champion innovation in North Carolina's tech sector while providing that voice for the tech community. We have about 650 member companies employing over 300,000 workers in North Carolina. So we do work in 4 major areas. We have a professional networks area, government affairs, sector promotion, and then talent development, which is my area. So talent and workforce really are frequent topics in all 4, well, obviously the 4th area, all of those areas. But talent is really critical to the success of an organization. Labor force has been changing. Future talent pipeline are a big focus in the US, but especially for tech companies, as they have those specific skill needs and are rapidly changing and evolving very quickly. So we host these talent and workforce development focused webinars throughout the year. So watch for announcements and promotions in our newsletters and on social media. Some of our topics in the past and topics we'll feature in the future include things like education, the role of the community college system, K through 12 system, training and development, women in tech, recruitment, retention, diversity, pretty much anything that deals with talent and workforce development. If you have suggestions or requests for topics, please let me know. I'll share my email in the chat in just a few minutes. So on to our session this morning. If you have questions during the session, please use the Q&A box. If it is something timely, something that Kyle's speaking of, I'll come back on and we'll read the question and he can address it right then. And if not, we'll wait until the end and address all the questions at that point. We'll get to as many as we can. So today's session, again, is hosted by Creative Talent Endeavors. NC Tech's proud to have them as a member as they engage with our fellow members to address their talent issues and also with job seekers within our network to be successful in their searches. Kyle Samuels is the founder and has quite a background. I will read his bio because there's a lot to cover. Don't want to miss anything. So Kyle Samuels, founder and CEO of Creative Talent Endeavors, is an iconoclast in the world of executive search. With over 2 decades in HR and talent acquisition, his passion for shaking up the status quo has consistently redefined industry standards. Working in pivotal roles at global organizations like Yum Brands and GE Aviation, Kyle's charted a transformative path. At GE, he ignited strategic organizational change, spearheaded groundbreaking diversity initiatives, and championed state-endorsed apprenticeship programs. Yay! At Yum Brands, Kyle had the opportunity to lead the TA function for Yum Brands corporate and also work directly in brands like Pizza Hut Global and Taco Bell. In fact, Kyle was so well regarded at Taco Bell when the company volunteered to be his first client when he started CTE. When he launched CTE, his vision was clear: reimagine executive search. He's embraced progressive hiring strategies that consider neurodiversity and champion authentic self-representation. He believes in disrupting conventions, evidenced by CTE's forward-thinking approach that values unique perspectives in the talent landscape. CTE is the culmination of everything Kyle experienced and knew could be better. A recruitment firm that prioritizes diversity in its all various forms and transparency across every aspect of client interactions. His mission is to change the face of talent. His mission to change the face of talent has brought together people from all walks of life, has changed the trajectory of dozens of industry leaders, and will continue to push past outdated notions of diversity and industry best practices to cultivate a truly representative selection of leaders across corporate America. He's well qualified to lead our session today and cannot wait to hear from Kyle about building proactive talent pipelines. So after the fact, I will share a link to the recording. So in case you want to share with colleagues, you can do so. I know Kyle has a lot to cover. So with this, I will hand the mic over to Kyle and I will share your slides.
Thank you. First off, that was a lot. Wow, that was a book. I didn't know it was that long. Yeah. Thank you for reading that tome. I really appreciate it. Let's see. All right, guys. So, what is proactive talent pipelining? So, the definition, building a pool, qualified candidates before positions become available. If you're wondering how would I know what jobs I'm going to need in the future, we'll talk about that in a little bit. And the second part, continuously engaging with potential talent to fill future roles efficiently. That is super important. That is crucial. If you don't do that right, you can actually end up doing more damage than good. And we're going to talk about the different steps and aspects in a little bit. But I do want to make sure that everyone understands that continuously engaging, the two most important parts of this word, I'm sorry, of this sentence, because people listen to what you say, and if you don't do what you say you're going to do, if you don't follow up, instead of building credibility, which is the point of proactive talent pipeline, you're actually hurting your brand in the process. So you don't want to do this if you don't have the capacity to actually continue to follow up and keep in contact with the prospects. Next slide, please. So the three big reasons to invest in talent pipelining: number one, reduces your time to hire. So think about it. You already have candidates before you have the need. That is gonna result in a shorter time to fill the role. It strengthens your employer brand. As I talked about before, this part is crucial. When you're doing talent pipelining, candidates get to learn about your organization in a low pressure environment. I'm gonna pause right there. No? Oh, I still see you. Sorry. I thought that meant you had a question.
Sorry.
No worries, no worries. Okay, sorry. Let me go back. So candidates get to learn about your organization in a low pressure environment. And what I mean by that is this: they know that you're not courting them for a role right now. So all the typical, I love my job, I don't want to move, I can't move, my kid's in high school, it's okay. We're not talking about you leaving right now. We simply want to talk to you about our organization, learn more about you, and then see if in the future there's possibly an opportunity where things could match, right? And so the great thing about this is the response rate is very high compared to when you're reaching out to someone specifically for, I want you for this job, right? That's pressure. That's an instant decision. I don't know. I don't know about your company. This is a much softer way to land to start to build that relationship. And then it improves the candidate quality because, as I said, since the interaction is not as high stakes as a formal interview where you have the job description, you know exactly what the client is looking for, it's make or break situation, candidates tend to be more authentic. And so that's great because it's easier to suss out skill set and fit. And one of the reasons why is because since there is no particular job that they're trying to squeeze into, or there's no job description that they're trying to show that they can do every single thing there, you're just meeting them and understanding who they are in general. And yes, you can do some KPI testing and some skill assessing, but it's really about getting to know the person versus strictly deciding if they are the fit for job ABC. Next slide, please. Thank you. So one of the other things we talked about, speed. I want you to think of proactive talent pipelining like this. Imagine instead of making a reservation, you go to the hottest restaurant in your city at 8 p.m. on a Saturday night and just walk in and hope that there's a table. Odds are there's not going to be a table because you didn't plan ahead. It's the same thing with talent pipelining. You have candidates that are pre-vetted and ready when a position opens. So for example, you might run something like this. Let's say you know in the next 6 to 12 months, you're going to need, I don't know, 4 HR directors in each region. Great. It makes more sense for you to immediately start sourcing those types of talent. So let's say it's one's in the East Coast, West Coast, North, South. You start building those relationships before you need them. So then once the job is ready, you have people and you've already, again, determined the KPI. So, hey, for this role, you need to have an MBA, 10 years of manufacturing experience, and be willing to move to Texas. When you do proactive talent pipelining, you already know the people who fill all those boxes versus the typical search environment where you get the job description, your recruiters go out to search, and they're starting cold. They don't know if this person wants to move to Texas or not. They may know if they have an MBA, obviously, because of LinkedIn, but they don't know anything else. It takes a lot longer, right? The other part is it minimizes disruption of business operations. Interviews, let's just be honest, they're important. And having a panel interview or a final round interview is very important and something that I hope continues to stay. But it's disruptive. You have a bunch of executives who are trying to make times in their day to interview the candidates. And so you want to honor their time. And what better way to do that is to mitigate as much risk as possible and make sure that the people that they are seeing are going to be viable candidates for the role. I'm sure some of you have been hiring managers or part of a hiring panel, and you're interviewing someone and you're scratching your head like, how did they even get in here? I don't understand why. We don't want that to happen, right? So like I said, it minimizes disruption to your business operations as well because you're dealing with more quality and not so much quantity. Next slide, please. So access to top talent. What you want to do is build relationships with high potential candidates. And that way you avoid settling for the best available when hiring under pressure. Oftentimes with just-in-time hiring, there's such an urgency to fill the role. And it could be various things. It could be, no, this role is really crucial and we need someone right now. It could be that maybe the role isn't that crucial. It's been open for 6 months, but it's been open for 6 months and starting to get eyes. It could be that your hiring manager is saying, hey, we've had this role open for 6 months and I haven't seen any adverse impact to the company. So do you really need that headcount? And that is sometimes, unfortunately, when hiring managers say, you know what, let's just hire Bob. He can do 72% of what we need to do. And maybe we can teach him the other 28, but we got to throw someone in the seat. Versus instead of just settling for Bob, you've got Chris and Sally and George over here who've already said, please contact me the next time you have an opportunity in your finance department. I'd love to speak about it, right? That is such a better way to raise the bar, have continuous talent. And again, you're keeping the relationship going with the talent that you have. And always remember that there's dual fold. It's not just that the people in your talent pipelining could be candidates. They will oftentimes give you referrals, especially as you start to build that relationship, because maybe they don't want to move in that case for that opportunity, but they know someone who will. And because they've had a positive experience with your organization, they're willing to make that referral. People oftentimes are very, we'll say, careful with their referrals, and they only want to do it when it makes sense. They don't want someone to get upset with them for saying, why did you tell me to go interview with this company? And so again, you're building your employer brand while you're doing your talent pipeline. You're marketing your organization and opportunities to potential future candidates. And that is exposure you don't get when you just call them as soon as you have the job posted. Next slide, please. Now this part hits me right in the cortisone, right in the heart. So Creative Talent Endeavors, we are an executive search firm that specializes in director and above, and we do a great job. But that being said, I've also been a buyer of search, and I understand that you don't always have the budget, and sometimes you don't have the need for a third-party search agency. The reason why the proactive talent pipelining helps is because, well, let me stop. I will say it works well when done in conjunction with your org dev or talent teams. This can reduce the need to spend. And what I mean by that is you have to make sure that the talent team, the recruitment team rather, is aligned with the goals of the talent team. For example, succession planning. If you know that your CMO for Germany is going to get promoted in the next 8 months, it would be great to let your recruitment team know that they should be looking for some potential backfills before the need comes, right? And so that's why it's important that they are in lockstep and that communication is important. The other part is this. We talk about the lower cost per hire with the continuous engagement. Now, again, continuous engagement part is key, but you come to a search firm typically when you don't, especially at the executive level, you don't have access to our relationships, right? But when you build your own relationships, you can reduce some of those costs. So instead of coming to us because we're very well connected in the HR community and we're always going to have a bunch of contacts, if you start to build your own, you save that fee, right? So it's something to think about. You can actually reduce your recruitment costs while reducing the time to fill. Think about it. Next slide, please. So I mentioned the relationship part several times, and that's because even though it's a company that hires you and it's a company that pays your paycheck, when we leave organizations and when we join organizations, yes, we're joining the company in terms of we're assuming that it's fiscally successful and safe and legal and all that good stuff, right? Table stakes. But the reason you join is the experience you have during the interview process. All the people you've met, how did they treat you? How did they seem to be treated? What stories did you hear about how their careers developed this organization, or maybe not, right? If someone was being very frank with you. But the point is that people join companies because of the employees they speak with during the process. And the more positive interactions they have, the more likely they are to say yes when they receive an offer. This is no different. It's just a different cadence in a different situation. The more positive interactions they have during this process, the more likely they are to respond and say yes when you reach out to them with an actual job. Now, to do this, you must make sure you send company updates. You're congratulating them on their career successes. It does take time and effort. And if you've got a bunch of recs that your team needs to handle, I understand you may not have the capacity to do this, but it does yield results. Just someone remembering someone's birthday, someone remembering that someone mentioned that they're a baseball fan and maybe your company took your people out to a baseball game, just showing them a pic and saying, "Oh, I'd love to see you here," something like that, right? That matters. And one of the reasons it matters is most companies aren't doing it. We're going to spend a little time in a moment talking about a company that does it very, very well. But most companies don't do that. And that's a great way for you to stand out within the recruiting community. Because again, a lot of people are not doing this. Next slide, please. So I know this is NC Tech, right? So think about this. Imagine, and if some of you did, then kudos to you. You were rock stars. But imagine if 2 years ago, your organization had already assessed its talent needs in regard to AI, and you had started actively pipelining what the world's most in-demand job is right now. You would be insanely ahead of the curve. I will tell you from experience, AI-focused jobs are difficult to recruit for now. One of the reasons why is because a lot of the people who have the skill set, like a job like a head of AI prompting and morality didn't exist 3 years ago. And so the person who has that skill set, they might be at a company and their role could be product engineer too. And so you're starting a search going after some of the most high paid people in the country, and you don't even know where to find them, versus having that pipeline set up of people who you've introduced to your organization, you've learned a little bit about them, and once you have an opportunity, you can reach out with your internal recruitment team, get a warm welcome, and start talking about the role. Now, I'm using AI in the part talking about developing talent pipelines for emerging skills, but I also want to talk about preparing for rapid growth or market shifts. Let's say this. Let's say your organization is planning a big expansion to South America. You want to start building a roster of talent who, speak Spanish and understand the region and the culture right now. You don't want to wait until the first job posting is approved. So again, this is part of the talent acquisition team being in lockstep with the HR, the talent, or the org dev. Every company culture is different team to understand what the mission and goals are of the greater organization. Because if you do have your TA team in a silo and it's really just in time, you're missing out on great opportunities to proactively build your talent pipelines. Because again, it will cut down on your time to fill and it will reduce your search costs, two things that every company is going to want. And so now I'd like to take a moment and go to the next slide and talk about a company that does it really, really well. So MasterCard. MasterCard practices an always-on hiring model, so they continuously engage job seekers for both current and future opportunities. And the way it works is once someone expresses an interest in exploring opportunities at MasterCard, they'll start having career conversations with the talent before they apply. And that's just to really find out what the person's interested in, what they want to do, what their strengths are, and then turning around to find out if there's a role for them at MasterCard. So for example, if there's someone who says, "Hey, I never want to work in an office," and MasterCard says, "Well, all of our offices, we expect people to come in 3 days a week." No harm, no foul, but they now know that that person doesn't fit and that's okay. Conversely, when they find someone who says, "Oh, I'm happy going in 3 days or more," they know that's someone to check off on the list. And then from a talent scouting perspective, what they do is this helps them generate more leads. So that way it puts them in a better position to build a better team. And right now they have over 900 cases. They're closing on 1 million people that opted into their talent community. So that means that these people are seeing their updates. They're seeing information about job fairs, quarterly results, etc. And so they said that has contributed to over 2,000 influence hires in 2023. And that's what they mean is talent that was exposed to one or several recruitment marketing and talent sourcing campaigns and subsequently decided to join MasterCard. MasterCard doesn't spend a lot of time or money dealing with executive search firms, except for C-level roles, because they have built such a great network, a talent network of people who have said, yeah, let me know when you have an opportunity. They don't have to, right? And they also spend a lot of money. Well, I won't say a lot, but they do spend money and effort to make sure that those people are being kept engaged. Sometimes they surprise and delight them with gift cards and things like that. And again, it all depends on what your organization does, but there are many ways to set yourself apart as an employer of choice. And a lot of them aren't that expensive, right? A $25 MasterCard gift card, especially from the company that makes them, is not a big deal, but that means a lot to a potential candidate. And then finally, let's go to slide 10.
Before we move to the next slide, there is one question very related to MasterCard, but how small companies work through that. So how does a small company build and maintain a pipeline in an efficient way, not having the huge TA staff that MasterCard does?
Exactly the same way, because it's a scale, right? If you're a small company, you're not expecting to have 900,000 members in your community. Your community might be 900 to start, and that's okay. But you would follow the same methodology because, again, MasterCard, what they say, 2,000 jobs this year, you might have 20 jobs this year. So you can follow the same methodology. It's just that the scale and perhaps the scope is going to be different. So again, it would be, let's say you're a small company and you know that you're going to need to have 2 or 3 plant managers in the next 6 months. That's okay. You would follow the same process. You'd find the talent that looks like they would be prospects. You reach out to them proactively and let them know, hey, listen, I'm not trying to steal you. Just want to tell you about Acme Incorporated and some of the great things we're doing. You look very talented, and we just want to have a conversation. Just trust me and try it. You would be surprised, but, or maybe not, but people are so much more willing to have that conversation with you once the pressure of you're trying to make me quit my job goes away.
All right, next slide.
All right, so finally, ready to build your talent pipeline. I hope we get a good conversation after this, but hopefully you've seen how this can lead to cost savings, faster hiring, and better candidates. And there are 2 options, right? You can build or buy. If your internal recruitment team has the capacity, right? Because understand that there are always jobs coming up every day, especially at a large company. So they have to have the capacity, number one, and the skill set to be able to approach these passive candidates while also handling their open rec load. That is absolutely a solution that's worth investing in. But if you don't have the capacity or the skill set to do this, there are third-party options, right? You can hire an expert. Like I mentioned, the reason people come to search firms is to be able to have access to our networks, right? We have a pipelining product called CTE Ambassador where we do just that. We allow you as a client, in 1 month, you could say, we need to speak to 20 people who have experience in plant manufacturing and operations, are willing to move to South Carolina, have an MBA and at least 10 years of leadership in our environment or whatever. Then the next month you could say, hey, we're really doing a diversity push and we're looking for veterans. We want veterans in finance, marketing, et cetera. Whatever it is, we can cater it to you. And other companies can as well, right? We may not be the only people to do that. We're probably one of the best though. But that is something that you can think about. You can build it or buy it. I would say if you have the capacity to do it internally, again, it hurts me to say this, I would say do it yourself. You have more control and you can lower costs. But if you don't have the capacity and you do have the funds to do it, I would say invest in it with an external partner because it's always better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. And with that, I'm going to close the presentation and I'd love to have some conversation with you guys and take some Q&A.
So please feel free to add any questions in the Q&A box. There aren't any yet. I will add my 2 cents. All of this makes great sense. I don't think anyone would argue that it's not important to have that network vetted and ready. But really, back to the question about how does a small company do this? Is there a how-to manual? Is it best to work with a third party? Are there things that companies can do on their own? Do you have a guide or some specific recommendations?
We do, right? So I would say just some major things to think about is first off, it has to start with the planning. You have to be able to forecast the talent needs that you have and make sure that those are legit. So I would not just say, oh, AI is popular. We're definitely going to need 6 AI people in 2025 unless you know you are, right? And so really understand what are your future talent needs, number one. Number two, who do we have internally the best people to reach out and engage this talent? If you do, that's awesome and they have the capacity, then these are your recruiters. So if a recruiter knows how to do a full-time job, there should be nothing different with them pipelining except for the relationship part. Because recruiters, we're used to, we get a rec, we close the rec, it's done. This is, you get a prospect, you find the prospect, you nurture the prospect, and a role could pop up in 2 months, could pop up in 18 months, who knows? And so again, that's the skill set, is just making sure that people understand that this is a continual process and it's not as much of a closed process as the actual search where you want to knock it out in 2 or 3 months.
Well, again, you and I were talking before we started this morning about just the importance of building those relationships. Recruiting and hiring has definitely changed in the last several years, and employer branding is so important. People are looking for more from a company more often now than they were maybe 5 or 10 years ago. That trust building is so important. Building the personal relationships. We all want to feel like we're wanted where we work, or that we're wanted personally for a new role. And just you're right, it does take time and effort and very intentional planning on how to make that work. And very easy, I'm sure, to put on the back burner of not a priority, but it will pay off in the long run. So we don't have any other questions popping up. Do you want to say any other final words about
I was going to
creative
say,
talent endeavors, how you particularly work with clients?
absolutely. So, one thing, and if you're asking like NC Tech, this is the search firm, what are they doing? So, for any of you know, if you know how typically search works, is you pay a percentage of the salary that goes to the candidate, and that's how it's been for over 100 years. It works great for search firms because, let's be honest, you're hiring us because we have the capacity and skill set to do something you can't do. So if you tell us the band for a role or the comp range is 200 to 300K, and we're like, well, all we can find is these 300K people, you have to trust us, right? But the problem is that we're being incentivized to give you the most expensive person that you will say yes to, not the best person the most quickly, right? And so what we did is we built the industry's first ever value-based pricing search algorithm. And so what it does is you can type in the things that make your role unique. Compensation, the location, is it work from home, is it remote, is it hybrid, right? Industry, etc. And within 30 seconds, you will get what we call our guarantee. Now that is a static price. It does not change with the compensation. The reason why is all the data you've given us allows us to come up with a price that we know, I'm just gonna be frank with you, we have to be able to make money, but also we don't need to bang you over the head for it. Because I've always found it interesting that if you're in a search and the candidate needs, some of these executives, you get the big money, they want another 100 grand to say yes to the role. And so me as a recruiter, I go, hey client, Andrea's amazing. She'd love to come, but she needs 100 grand. You know where her salary was. We've got to have her. We're going to pay 100 grand. Great. For that game of telephone, if I'm charging the standard 33 and a third percent, I just made $33,000 for my firm and I had zero value. If you take me out of that conversation and the candidate talks to the hiring agent, they still get the 100K. And so why should the search firm make more money just because you're paying more money to a client? I would actually argue any search firm that convinces the person that they don't need the 100K and this job is so amazing, then maybe give them a bonus, right? And so it's the first time it's ever happened. We launched it actually a year ago today. We launched it on Halloween. That's crazy. That's awesome. Spooky. And it's just a different way to think about search. So that's the other thing I would say to you guys, working with search firms, make sure you ask them when they give you the price, just ask them, well, how did you come up with that price? Because we know that in the current state, it's way easier to get someone to say yes to a remote job than across the country. And so if our client is doing a remote job, their price is typically going to be less than if they were doing a hybrid or in office because you've exponentially made it easier for us to find people all over the country to say yes to that role. So why wouldn't we give you relief on the price? Because you're making it easier for us. So that's just a little bit how we work, but I would definitely encourage you to ask your search partners, well, how'd you come up with this price and what's your strategy? And I'd love to seriously ping me. I'd love to hear what they say. If you just say to, well, how did you come up with 25% or 32% or 33%? Just see what they say. There's no rigor to it. It's literally the most that clients would say yes to. Search firms would charge 99.9% of people would say yes to it. I'm just being honest.
I love the transparency,
Got
and always love when entrepreneurs challenge the status quo and try and figure out a better way to do something and a better way for their customers. There's one other comment. I'll try to summarize a little bit about this was from the same person that asked about being a small company and realizing it's really hard to get a potential candidate, especially with those tech skills, to take a call for a future job. Not quite the same value proposition as a company like MasterCard, or a busy search firm that has tons of opportunities, but definitely an opportunity just figuring out how to do that on the small scale,
yeah.
versus somewhere like MasterCard. And she also made a comment about, no $25 MasterCard gift cards that are just floating out there to keep people interested.
Well, I was going to say, in that case, what you want to do is, let's say you're a small company, you're looking for tech people. There are people at the Metas and Googles and IBMs that they're there and they're making money, but they crave being a part of something smaller, being able to build something, having more impact. And so not everyone is going to say yes, but that person who is like, I am one of 8,000 software engineers in this group at Amazon, and no one above a manager knows that I exist in this organization, to have the opportunity to work in an organization where the CEO or the president is going to actually know them and know the impact that they make. For the right person, that is going to be very important. But you gotta kiss a lot of frogs and find them. But trust me, for a small company, listen, I'm a small company. We currently have 9 employees, right? And so we hire people and we pull them from much larger organizations by definition. So it is definitely possible. It's just about finding out the right person for your organization and making sure that you're marketing in the right way, which is authentically, so that someone's just like, oh, this sounds like a place for me, right? And it will happen, trust me, especially these days with the way these big companies are ghosting candidates, like the horror stories, they just keep coming. I'm serious. And as you know, as a small business owner, not that we want to, but we just don't have the privilege of doing that to candidates or vendors or clients because every sale, every interaction is so much more important to us than say a MasterCard. So don't give up hope. And also, by the way, whoever asked that question, I don't know, I'm on LinkedIn or you can email me at kyle.samuels@hirecte.com. But I'd be happy to connect with you and see if I can help you out with some tips and provide some counsel.
And the email that I'll send to all of the attendees on the call, will have your contact information, your LinkedIn, so they can get in touch, because definitely this is a conversation that can go on and on. Shameless plug for NC Tech. Also, we have lots of events. Our Brews and Bites often are filled with people that are maybe not looking for jobs, but are curious about other opportunities. And yeah, it is putting in the work. And then the data nerd in me coming back out of, you've got to have the system behind to keep track of all those people, to keep track of how you're communicating with them, how often, what their skill sets are. Do they want to work remote? Do they want to work, hybrid in an office? All of those things. So appreciate all of those comments, especially for the smaller companies, because I mean our membership is a vast majority small companies, under 50 employees definitely, but I'd have to look back at the percentages, but it's a crazy amount that have under 25. So think that's where those smaller companies that are looking to build their tech talent pipelines, looking at those other small companies may be a way to go as well. Kyle, do you have any other wrap-up comments you'd like to finish us with?
Something you said just made me say this, the one about you never know, right? And so I fell in love with executive search because it's like solving a puzzle. Client has a need, you find someone, and again, back in the olden days when I started before Zoom existed and all that good stuff, it was a phone call. And the most exciting, and again, this is when people, there are these things called offices and buildings. And so you would go there Monday through Friday. It was a time. It was great. That was playing. But no, one of the greatest things a recruiter could hear is when you're talking to someone, they say, hold on for a second, let me close my door. And you're just like, yes, I got him. So what I say is this, on LinkedIn, they have the thing, if you guys use LinkedIn Recruiter, your teams are, it says, open to work, etc. I'm not saying don't go after that, right? Because it's easy pickings. You don't have to convince those people to leave their company. They're already thinking about it. But if you see someone awesome and it doesn't have that, go after them because there are so many people in my career who were totally happy where they were. And then I got a hold of them, and 4 months later, they're in a whole new state and a whole new company, and they're having a blast. And they never knew they wanted this opportunity, but you made it compelling. So don't just assume that because someone doesn't actively look like they're looking. Most of the people that we go after are passive, and what I'll tell you about that is everyone has kind of got one eye open for the next opportunity, and if yours is the right one, then it'll work out for you.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for attending today. Thank you, Kyle, for sharing your thoughts and expertise with the attendees today. I will share out a link to the recording. Please feel free to share that and all of the contact information for CTE and for Kyle, as well as my contact information if you have any questions. So I hope everyone has a great Halloween. I forgot to mention that the first thing this morning. I hope everyone has a great day and happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween. Thank
All
you,
right.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.